Hi guys, welcome back to the Broke Geek Girl channel. Now before you comment on it, yes I am wearing the same sweater as last time. It's comfy, it's new, deal with it. So today for our video I thought I would talk about and define some of the cryptocurrency definitions that are flying all over the place. I know some of them can be very confusing. My father has used them at me and I've just been like, what? But I'm just going to attempt to give a bit of a primer on some of the terms that you may need to know or may hear and wonder what they mean. So these are in no particular order. Terminology that you may need to know is as follows. Address. You've probably heard me use this a bunch of times. It is exactly what it sounds like. It is the address to which you send a transaction. It works exactly the same as if you were writing an address on a piece of mail and sending it through the post, except that it is a string of numbers and letters that you send Bitcoin to over the internet. Altcoin, I used that in the last episode, but I hadn't really defined it. So an altcoin is any coin that is not Bitcoin. Some people consider Ethereum to be separate from Bitcoin and altcoins. Some people consider Ethereum to be an altcoin. Bitcoin is the original, and then altcoins are anything else. Blockchain, I've mentioned this a bunch of times. It is the data stream / permanent record that controls all transactions. It uses mining and rewards to incentivize people to contribute to the blockchain, but it's basically a record of all transactions and other things as well, not just cryptocurrency transactions. Other things can be stored on the blockchain, but it uses mathematical functions and reward systems to solidify data in an unalterable way. So again, unalterable, permanent, you cannot change it, and it lets you know exactly who owns what without being able to alter or smudge or in any way cheat the system. Once it is confirmed, that's who it belongs to, and it has to be transferred in order to change. And then a block is just a singular page within the permanent record, ledger, etc. That is the blockchain. It holds a file and is again unalterable permanent data. The block height is number of pages or blocks or chains in the blockchain since the original, and using the height of the blockchain you can kind of reverse engineer the date of certain transactions. Fork. You may have heard this one before. It comes up occasionally. So a fork is a divergence in the blockchain. It can happen either due to a 51% attack, a bug in the software, or new consensus rules. So there's two different kinds of forks. There's hard fork or soft fork. Hard fork is when it literally diverges into two different streams, one being the original and one being the new set of rules, and that's usually how an altcoin gets introduced. Bitcoin, or whatever the main block is, continues on its regular trajectory, and the new rules go off in a different direction with a new history from that point on, doing new stuff. And then there's also a soft fork, which is basically where everyone just kind of agrees on new rules and it just applies going forward. It doesn't actually branch off into something new. Halving is the rate at which rewards get reduced. For Bitcoin, the reward is halved every 210,000 blocks. The first time happens once that number of blocks has occurred, and then it will have again at that increment every time. The reason that halving occurs is twofold, but mostly for one reason. The main reason is because as computers get faster and faster, it becomes easier and easier to mine. So if it became just super easy to acquire Bitcoin, it would alter the value of Bitcoin by bringing it down, because it's just super easy to get it. And then also because there's a finite number of Bitcoin that can be mined, and theoretically, as these number of blocks occur, the amount of Bitcoin that can still be mined should be decreasing at the same rate. The value of Bitcoin is supposed to be increasing at the same rate that mining becomes more difficult. Of course, there are lots of outside factors that can influence the price of Bitcoin, but the reason the rewards get halved is because theoretically the Bitcoin should be worth more and computers should be fast enough to keep up. And then the hash rate is the speed at which blocks are discovered and the equations are solved in order to create, or rather discover, Bitcoin, because there's a finite amount. Now, the hash rate is not a universal rate. It's not the difficulty of the equation per se, so much as the operating power of the computer. Certain processors or cards can accomplish the same equation at a faster time, so a computer with a higher hash rate will be more efficient at mining. And then mining, I've mentioned it before, and I've pretty much explained it through defining other words, but it's just the process in which equations are solved to release Bitcoin. You could go into more detail as to how it happens, but basically it's just solving math to make money. P2P stands for peer-to-peer. You may have heard of it before, especially if you do any kind of like streaming or downloading or whatever, but basically it just means it's directly connecting from one person to another person as opposed to everyone connecting to the same server or network. It makes things a little bit faster, a little bit more distributed, as opposed to one centralized place where everyone has to go. POW does not stand for prisoner of war. It is proof of work. It has to do with mining again. It usually requires complicated computers that are running constantly and can be a bit of an energy drain. Some of my friends have linked me to different news articles about how one Bitcoin transaction uses the same amount of electricity to run a family home for like a day or a month. It takes a lot of energy to mine, which is one concern that some people have. Unless you're using clean energy, it can be the one drawback to cryptocurrencies insofar as carbon footprint. But there's also POS, which is proof of stake, which is a slightly more green alternative. With POS, you're basically just proving that you own a lot of Bitcoin, whereas with POW, you're proving that you are capable of the computing power. So going off of that same point, a lot of the big mining companies do use green energy, not necessarily due to an altruistic save the world mentality, although you should be green for that, we only have one planet, but also because it's cheaper. So a lot of the big mining companies are in Iceland, which uses geothermal. I think John McAfee is near a hydroelectric dam. There's also like solar power and stuff. So a lot of the big miners do use green energy, mostly because it is cheaper, but it is something to keep in mind for the longevity of Bitcoin. We have to be here in order to make transactions. Other things you've probably heard of are like public and private keys, signatures and stuff. Those are basically just the ways in which your identity is proven and transactions are approved. Basically, it's just used in the cryptography process. So yeah, the public key is what allows people to see your address and send you money, and the private key allows you into your wallet to accept it. Smart contracts. These are something that are going to come up more and more as blockchain technology becomes more mainstream. Basically, it uses the concept of the blockchain and unalterable permanent record of information to solidify agreements just like a normal contract, but in a permanent, unalterable state. So exchange, I've already gone over exchanges in previous videos, but basically it is just a website where you convert real world money into crypto money. There are a couple of international ones. North America tends to use things like Coinbase. In Canada, you might use Quadriga. There's a whole bunch. The main thing to keep in mind with the exchanges is that while you send your money to get crypto and there are built-in wallets, you do not control the private key. You do not control the wallet. The company does. So it is in your best interest to get the money in and out as quickly as possible and put it into a wallet that you do have control over. You can input security features. It is in your personal control, just so that you know nothing's going to happen to it and you know where it is. And fiat, that's basically just any government issued money, like the US dollar, the Canadian dollar, the euro, pound sterling, stuff like that. So if you've ever seen that word floating around and you weren't really sure what it means, it just means real world money from a government body. So a whale is a massive stakeholder, someone that owns a large amount of crypto. This really only comes into play if you are trading. Whales can somewhat control the price of a currency depending on if they are buying or selling a significant amount. It is something to keep in mind because in that instance, one person or company can kind of alter the market depending on what they're doing. So margin trading is a form of trading. It's more risky and is something that you probably don't want to do unless you're an experienced trader, but basically it risks the coins you already have to have a higher payout in the end. You can trade either by going long or going short. ATH stands for all-time high, which we've seen several of recently. FUD, F-U-D, stands for fear, uncertainty, and doubt. There's also something called a FUDster, which is someone that intentionally spreads FUD propaganda in the hopes of lowering the value of a coin so that they can buy more of it. Some FUD is just the media machine not understanding crypto and being cautiously aware, whereas some FUD is intentional propaganda to lower prices. So you can't always tell why there's the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. You just kind of have to do your own research and come to your own conclusions as opposed to believing everything you hear or see. And then there's FOMO, which is a very common phrase. I've seen it without meaning crypto. I guess crypto's kind of adopted it as well. But it stands for the fear of missing out. FOMO tends to apply in crypto when a price of a coin starts to skyrocket and people start freaking out that they're not invested in it, so they hop on or wish that they had hopped on board. But FOMO can apply to pretty much anything. A lot of the time it applies to people that wish they were at a party or something. So in the real world, FOMO tends to mean if you're sitting at home and you wish you were out or something like that. But as far as it means in crypto, it's usually when the hype of something gets to the point where you take a risk you wouldn't otherwise because you're worried about what would happen if you don't. You're worried about missing out. You're afraid to miss an opportunity. So you jump in even if it means breaking rules that you would normally have put in place for yourself. So just make sure that you're not buying into hype just because there is hype and that you are still only investing what you can afford to lose into things that you've researched, etc., etc. Just, invest responsibly. So an ICO is an initial coin offering. I know I saw that a million times before I really understood what it meant. I had to ask my dad, why do all these Instagram accounts have ICO at the end of their name? And it's because they were promoting or shilling or pumping their coin. Basically, an ICO is like a Kickstarter for a new coin. They offer you a better deal for the coin in exchange for startup money, and then the coin comes into existence and they'll start selling it at the regular market price, but the ICO is a better deal for those that get in on the ground level. HODL, H-O-D-L, I was just like, what can it mean? What does it mean? Why is it spelled like that? What can it possibly mean? Literally, someone just spelled the word hold wrong on a forum, and the internet, being the sarcastic assholes that they are, went with it. So it's just a meme based off of a typo, and it just means to hold or stake. Staking, again, is just a synonym for holding. It's what happens when you buy a coin for the intent of just holding on to it and waiting for the price to go up. So another one that I haven't really explained, but I know I've used in previous videos, is market cap. The market cap is the total number of coins multiplied by the price or value of the coin. So market cap doesn't just apply to cryptocurrencies. Companies have market caps like Apple, Google, etc. It basically just means the strength of the company, coin, or investment. It's basically has to do with how smart it is to invest in it, how strong the investment is, longevity, stuff like that. But it's basically just a rate or number or whatever that is defined by the value and popularity. Okay, so I had a bunch of other words that I was also going to define, but I think I'm going to leave it at that. Maybe I'll do a part 2 later on, but I think that kind of is enough for now. Hopefully you learned something. If you have any other words that you think I should have covered and didn't, feel free to leave them in the comments below. I'm always interested in learning more, and if you have a better definition for anything I said, also feel free to leave that in the comments, because I am all for better educating people, and sometimes my take isn't always the most efficient, so if you can say it better than me, feel free. Again, I have my beautiful website here on the screen behind me. It is currently online. It is not necessarily done. I'm kind of beta testing it, but I will link it below just in case you are interested. I have currently one blog post because I was just testing how the blog function works before I have to really get into that in the new year. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you later. Bye!